Very nice development board from ST Micro for the 32-bit Micro series. Married together with a high power LED driver board which we designed. Tested it, all working. Handed it over to a software engineer to finish off the application software. And we have, I said, be careful how you connect it. It's 12 volts. It's for a car. It's car headlamps actually. And look, here you go. There's the plugs I gave him. Red and black, positive and negative. What are the chances of? I thought, should I put it in a box with a power supply with it all plugged in, or should I just hand it over to him and let him get on with it? He surely can't plug it in the wrong way around. And do you know what? He did. So this leads to this video, which is really a soldering video. I've got to change this chip here, which is a multi-UART USB interface chip, and it gets hot when you plug it in. I don't know if it's the only thing that's blown up or not, but the micro LEDs on the micro are still flashing because the program's still in it that I left in it. It's a little LED down here which flashes. So 100 quid for the board. It's an ST Discovery board, or about £5 or $6 for the chip. So I'm going to try changing this chip. So this is what this video is really about. If you have a quick zoom in. Here's the package we're soldering. It's an LQFP-64 0.5 mil pitch with 0.2 width pins. So they've got a 0.3 mil gap between each pin. Alright, so that's what we're soldering. Just thought you might be interested in that. We can see that this this chip has released its magic smoke. There you go. You can see those scars on the top where some of the silicon has burnt out. So it is pretty fine pitch. Is that going to focus? Yeah, just about. There's my finger look. So you can see, I think there's a 15th hour lead pitch on these, or 10, I'm not sure, but there's quite fine lead pitch. So let's have a go at her and see if we can change her, shall we? Turn our air gun on, let it get good and hot. It takes a while to warm up actually, otherwise you end up sitting there like a pranny. Nothing's happening. What are we looking for now is my paintbrush, so I can put some of the old jollop on as usual. Good, thanks Delilah. Lube her up, and we're going to do this with just a soldering iron. I'm going to take it off with a hot air gun, but I'm probably going to put it back on with just a soldering iron. Let's turn my meter off. Right, so the hot air gun should be warm. Tweezers. Start warming her up a bit. You see the heat distortion. If this doesn't go easily, I'm going to go around and put some leaded solder on there to ease things along nicely. Right, I've done the preheat. I'm going a little bit lower now. I'm holding it about 10mm above the chip. Generally wafting and waiting and wafting and waiting. Temptations to turn the hot air gun up temperature wise, but it's not a good idea. You might as well just be patient, otherwise it will scorch something. And if you see things discolouring or plastic melting, you definitely got it too hot really. Give her a bit of a tug. She's still attached. Might need to run my iron around there just to give it a little bit of extra input. I think I will. So I'll get the old Weller set to, oh no, it's not even turned on yet. So get the Weller, put a little extra heat in. Oh, bloody. It's come loose, there we go. Right, just tip her over the edge. Some of these tracks are probably on ground planes and what have you, and there's a lot of copper underneath leaching away the heat from the air gun. Heat her up a little bit more. They're molten, aren't they? Okay, so she's moving now. And then just get hold of the old tweezers, if it's still molten hopefully. Pull her off. without knocking anything else. That's the danger. Right, noting that pin 1 goes down here where it says U106. Oh, the ident is... God, look at the length of those pads they put on there. Wow. They are really conservatively or liberally spaced out, those things. So that's got rid of the offending device. Hopefully that's the only fault, but somehow I doubt it. Put a bit more of the old King Bojol up on. Get some of the solder braid. You've all seen this in other videos. It's the equivalent. It's soldering blotting paper, basically. Soaks up your solder. Fine capillary action and very high surface tension of the solder. When you heat it up, it draws. You have to be careful you don't solder it onto the pad and then tug it, because it will come off and take the pad with it. But you just do a hoover and scrub, hoover and scrub. You see that pad? That's not solder in between. That's a strange way of doing it, isn't it? I think those two pads are actually common, but they've commoned them up by making them. Is that really true? Can that be true? Yeah, it is. I got a feeling this was an intern laid this board out, somebody without a lot of experience. Certainly whoever wrote the documentation for it ought to be shot. It's appalling. Hoover, hoover, clean, clean. We want to get those nice and flat, otherwise we're going to be in trouble. This solder braid is rubbish, I think. Need to get some more of the multi-core stuff is the best. Some of it really sucks it up, and others, like everything in life, some suck well and some don't. There you go. Talk amongst yourselves while I clean these up. It's that black bit there then. Is that a fault in the pad? That's actually a fault in the pad. Not very well made copper, boys. So we're gonna stick some jollop on here. Let it soak in as our IPA in the nice and easy, you can't see it, the nice and easy hair dye bottle. Not mine. I'm grey and proud. Not gay, grey I said. Although nothing wrong with being gay. But not my cup of tea. Not my anything, in fact. We've got it clean. As I say, cleanliness is next to godliness, especially in this game. Right. The software engineer is probably at home, got his feet up in front of the telly, playing around with some phone or PlayStation or something. And here I am repairing this because he put the plugs around the wrong way around. What does that tell you? I suppose everyone's heard about the joke about software engineer, mechanical engineer, a software engineer, and their manager in a car. And they're going down this mountain road. Suddenly the brakes fail, and they career down the hill, terribly out of control, and they just managed to screech to a halt right at the edge of the cliff at the bottom. And they're, that was close, wasn't it, lads? Says, yeah, that was close. So the mechanical engineer says, Jesus, I'm going to go and get the toolkit out and fix the brakes before we go any further in this bloody thing. And the manager says, well, hold on, before we do that, I think we ought to just have a meeting and discuss what's just happened. And the software engineer, she says, I think it was just a glitch. If we go back up the hill and try it again, I think it'd be alright then. And that's what software engineers are like. They don't have to prepare for anything. Everything gets delivered to their desk. They just download stuff. They don't really have to talk to anybody or ask anybody for anything. They just come into work, sit there in isolation, in a world of their own, creating vastly overcomplicated interfaces and code that no one else can understand, and congratulate themselves how clever they are. And also they like it because the cleverer or more obscure the information and the manuals and all the sort help and support is, the more they like it, because it keeps everyone else out. I mean, look at the money that software engineers earn compared to, say, a hardware engineer. Big difference in money, huge difference in capability as well, but hardware engineers tend to love hardware, whereas software engineers just tend to love software, but they get paid more for it. There's no justice. There is no justice. So we're going to solder this now. So we've got to clean our tip on the old tip cleaner. Give it a bit of a rub. No one likes a mucky tip. And I'm going to run along these pins. I'm going to solder one pin here by putting solder on the pad there. Okay, so she's in position. Let's put some jollop on. Without moving it. That's it. Right, so I normally do this with paste and hot air gun, but let's do a soldering job, shall we? So first of all, you clean your iron, give it a good old clean tip. Smoke, give it some solder. Let it flow along, don't touch the chip, don't touch the chip. Okay? And then we're going to solder all these. Now don't blink, otherwise you'll miss it. When I get down there I can't bloody see, you know. Okay, so that's that row done. Now these. Making sure my head is not in the way. Clean my solder iron first. The thing about this is to make sure you've got sufficient in the way of flux on there, so that you don't get any oxidation of the solder as you go along. Okay, that's those done. Now this row. Now if you get a solder bridge, there's no point in getting too upset about a solder bridge. You can deal with it. I did one just then, you saw, didn't you? And then this one. Okay. So we got a bit of a solder bridge on that one. I didn't put enough flux on, so let's put a bit of flux on. And let's get rid of, clean the iron and get rid of this solder bridge. Do you see that? Very clean iron tip. Just takes away the solder. If you had no flux on there, that would be awful. It will oxidise into a paste and you'll be in trouble. But we can quite happily go along and touch these pins up when there's flux on there ad infinitum to make sure they're soldered. Obviously I'll look at this with my eyeglass or on the 3D magnifying glass magnifier. And then finally the last lot there. So that's how you solder. A bit more of the old jollop on there, just make sure. I'm going to clean all this off in a minute. There you go. Using a Weller iron, I'll show it to you in a minute. I wouldn't use anything else. If you can afford it, buy yourself a Weller. It makes life so much easier when you're trying to do this sort of thing, because you know that the tip is going to be maintained. You know that if you hit a track that's got a lot of thermal sinking on it, that the things are going to fire up and get in there and put the heat back in for you. Otherwise it just goes cold and you're not working with the temperature at the solder at the right temperature, and so on and so on, and it gets very messy very quickly. Right, I think that's done, don't you? I'm going to inspect those, but I think that's done. Let's give it a bit of a clean, the old jollop again. Hopefully I soldered it on the right way around. Orientation. Right, make some solder and isopropyl alcohol and flux lacquer, and then just hold it over the bin and just give it a little bit of a wash, some flow over it just to take away the bulk of the material. Dilute the lacquery flux and then just mop with a piece of kitchen towel or paper towel or something. So there's our device soldered on. As I say, the hot air gun would make a much neater job, but in principle that's done, right? Okay. So if I just zoom out, I'm going to inspect that in a moment. I'll give it another bit. It needs a bit more of a clean, doesn't it? Now? My special anti-static toothbrush, not. Okay. Looks like there might be a bridge just there. Do you see that? Let's just take that off. You can see there's a lot of reflections. I can see much more clearly than you can probably, due to the camera. Those are bridged, but we know about those. That's part of the tracking on the board. That one's okay. Yeah, so we're all done, I think. I think we're all done. I won't inspect it, but you can see you needn't, if you've got flux, you needn't be worried about bridging because they're easily removed with the soldering iron. You just have to make sure that you give the soldering iron tip a really good clean. If I just zoom out, this is what I've got. I've seen it mentioned out there. It's like that is there's 6 for £1 in Lidl. They're sort of like chromy robot pube Brillo pad things, and you just, when it gets clogged up, whip another one in. But if you wipe your solder tip on there, it'll remove all the surface solder on the tip, so that when you put it back on the joint, the solder from in there will flow out around the tip. It's flowing around the surface of the surface tension, and it will suck that off. If you've got solder on the tip, even a small amount of solder on the tip, it won't suck it off, and you'll have to use a bit of braid or something to get rid of the bridges. But you can see that if you use sufficient flux, it's not an ideal way of doing it, but it does show you how to do it with just a soldering iron and a bit of patience. Okay, so it's quite a fine chip device. We've fine pitch device we've soldered there. There's the old one. I compare it to something which you'd know the size of, but I can't think of what at the moment. As a size comparison. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to inspect that, and the iron I'm using is this one. It's a Weller. This is my small Weller. WD. There we go. WSP20, and it is 80 watts. So you can see it's a small iron. I mean, look, there's my finger. It's a very short iron, very controllable, and it comes. The base station's got a button with 3 buttons on it. I'll go through it, but if you look at these irons. And undo this, you can see there's the tip will drop off, there's the heating element. Okay, end of there, that needs to be kept quite clean because this is the tip. That's all you've got between the end of the element and the tip. It sits on there like that. This is silver, and that is silver, because everyone knows that silver conducts heat better than copper. And sometimes you just need to, I can rub that on a bit of paper would do, wouldn't it? Any tax bills here I can use for a useful thing. There you go. So you get a bit of build up. I usually put you can see that it's the actual element is silver. I've had these irons for years, and very, very, very few failures. I can't remember the last time the Weller iron failed on me. So clean the ends. It's a Weller H tip, that one. Just give it a rub on the bench to take any oxide off it. See? Weller it says. They've even managed to write Weller on it, just what you need. And then you drop it back in the tube. And then screw it back up. But the very close coupling between the tip and the element means that when the tip starts to draw power, heat from away from the element can pump more heat in, and you get the full 60 watts going into your tip. If there's any gap or air gap, or one of those other types where you've got an air gap or a central heating element that goes around the outside of the tip, and the tip might be some other material, not copper, not silver, then your soldering experience won't be as good. Yeah, it'd be like yeah, not as good. I was trying to think of a clean analogy, but I couldn't think of one. But there you go. So that's how you do that. I hope you find that interesting. I will go through the soldering irons in more detail, but quite a few people have asked me how to solder devices, so that's how I do that one. And if you can just subscribe down there if you're interested in seeing other soldering escapades I do, then you'll be most welcome to watch them.